Hello and welcome everyone to today's session called Meet the Needs of Today's Managers with Live Virtual Training. My name is Susan Cullen and I'm President of Quantum Learning Solutions, and it's a pleasure to have you with us today to really discuss some tools and techniques you can use immediately that can help you meet the needs of today's managers. I'd like to begin by giving you a little bit of background about our organization before we start. Quantum Learning Solutions was founded in 1989. We are management development and productivity specialists, and we were also very early adopters of blended learning and live virtual training. We actually started using it about 10 years ago. I will tell you that the technology has really changed a great deal since we first started, but it's given us a unique opportunity to actually train thousands of people worldwide with a live virtual platform. We're probably best known for providing high-impact learning that gets bottom-line results for our clients, and it's because of this model of learning design that we use. We frequently use some type of assessment tool, whether it's a company-wide employee retention survey or engagement survey. It might be 360-degree multi-rater feedback, or it can also be self-assessment profiles, but we've incorporated them frequently into our training design. And then we begin to really focus on learning as a process as opposed to an event. So almost all of our programs are sessions that are spread out over time, and we found that that really gives our clients maximum impact because of that. We put a great deal of emphasis on practice, exercises, and on-the-job application between sessions with a really heavy focus on reinforcement and measurement. So we use a variety of learning tools and a variety of learning resources, and all of these approaches have really helped our clients achieve sustainable long-term benefits from our programs. So that's a little bit of background about us. Let's talk about our objectives for today. We want to provide and give you an overview of a proven method for enhancing management development for long-term impact. And we know that a lot of you are probably facing budget cuts and your company has suffered some in today's economy. So we're looking at how to recognize some successful low-cost resources that really can maximize the impact for your organization. So the challenge sometimes can be for many of our clients and probably many of you who are on the line, how do I do both of those at the same time? How do I enhance management development and also do it in today's economy? And that's what we really want to address and give you some tools for today. So our agenda for today's session is to begin to talk about the business challenges probably that many of you are facing, and then how is that impacting the role of manager and why the role of manager is so important now. And based on what's happening in the world today, there are some specific skill sets that managers especially need to meet those challenges today. And we'll take a look at that and spend a lot of time there. And then we'll look at how live virtual training can help you address those management needs, some key things you'll want to think about when you create programs that have long-lasting results. And I'll give you a case study example that illustrates how to put it all together, because I think that's probably the best way for you to have a visual understanding of how it can all work. And we'll then also provide some resources to help you at the end. Now, there are lots of ways that you can interact with us, and we encourage you to do that. There will be the ability for you to raise your hand, and I'll show you where you can do that in just a moment. And, we'll be just like we're all together in a face-to-face meeting where I'll ask you to raise your hand and let me know if you agree, and that'll be an easy thing to do. You'll also see several polling questions that we're going to bring in, and we hope that you'll share your thoughts with us as we do that. There's also a question box that you should see in your control panel on the right-hand side of your screen. Feel free to send us those questions as you go along. One of our associates is standing by, Kathy Doris. She'll probably be able to answer many of your questions, but she will also set aside some of those that she would like for me to address, and we'll spend some time trying to answer a couple of those at the end of today's session. And then one unique thing that I really hope you'll join us for is that we're going to offer a live chat at the end of today's session where we will tell you a website that you can go to, and we'll all be available there. I'll be available for 30 minutes to answer any additional questions you have, but you can also participate with other people there and share some good ideas. And One thing I also want to mention is that we have several free resources related to this topic of management development and live virtual learning that you can download immediately from that chat room site. So make sure you want to stay with us at the end and be able to download some of those resources. We'll talk about that as we get closer to the end of today's session. Also, one question that people frequently ask is, if they will be able to get a copy of the recorded webinar. And yes, I do want to let you know that we'll be sending that out to everyone in the next day or two. So you should be able to get that and want to be looking for that. Okay, so with that said, let's talk about what's happening now and what's happening in today's economic climate. And, probably for many of you, you've faced one or several of these. You might find that your organization has had some budget cuts, that you might have reorganized in some way, either in terms of reorganizing staffing and who reports to who, departmental reorganization. You might have procedures that have changed. Many of you may have faced layoffs. I know a lot of organizations have done that, and you might have experienced that, either whether you stayed and or whether you were one of the people that was laid off. It impacts everyone. That probably spending is highly scrutinized now, maybe even more so than it ever was before. And you might find that you're having modest, if any, salary increases if you are facing those. So one of the things I'm very interested in is giving you an opportunity. I'd like to hear from you, but also give you an opportunity to benchmark yourself with other people. And so we'd like to ask, what's really happening for you now, and which of these are you experiencing? So please go ahead and share your thoughts with us. You can see that there's an opportunity for you to click on one or more of those questions that you see on your screen. Please go ahead and let us know which of these are you experiencing now. And we'll take a look and give you an opportunity to see that for each other. It looks like getting quite a few of the votes in. I'm going to give it just another couple of seconds, and please make sure you select one or as many of these that you think apply to your organization. Okay, so let's now take a look at what the results show us. And what you'll notice, you can see here, is that we've probably got, it looks like the biggest percentage, are 84% of you are saying that spending is highly scrutinized. That we're also seeing 77% are saying corporate budget cuts, 71% modest if any salary increases. I'm happy to see that the smallest percentage came from layoffs. So I'm glad that many of you are not experiencing that as much, and that's a really important thing to be having now. So let's go back in then and see, with those thoughts in mind, also what's probably happening is that you are seeing some things impacting you from an organizational standpoint that you might be facing from the inside of your organization. It could be that you're looking at a need to encourage the development and effectiveness of your managers. Maybe they need to be doing things differently than they are now, and that they're having to recognize that they have fewer resources than they ever had before. There's fewer staff. There's limited resources because, as you just mentioned, a lot of things are being scrutinized more highly. So they have to do more and more with less. They've got to increase employee productivity so that employees aren't making mistakes that could be dangerous or costly in the midst of rising stress. Probably you've also seen that there's a lot of change going on, whether it's new roles, new responsibilities, new procedures, any type of in corporate climate change. And then in the midst of it all, you've got to keep people engaged, committed, and thriving. And, this is a tall order for those of you who are in workplace learning and performance. It's a tall order if you are a department head. So we'd like to see for a moment which of these challenges are you facing as well. And so let's send over another poll. And please share your thoughts with us here as well. Now, you can select as many of these as you think really apply to you as too. And let us know which of these are you facing in your organization, and what's probably some of the biggest challenges that you're facing now. So go ahead and click as many of these that seem to apply for you and send us your thoughts. We'd love to hear from everybody and see what you're really experiencing. Now, one of the benefits of this is that it also gives you a chance to benchmark your own experiences against other people who are in the session with us today. And, of course, at least you know you're not the only one who's facing some of these challenges. It can be pretty common, and we can see that it can happen with a lot of people. So with that thought said, let me share with you the results. And one of the things that you'll notice is it looks like, wow, 84% are saying you're really struggling still with the need to keep morale high and people engaged. And we've got, an even 69% wanting to encourage management effectiveness as well as helping staff embrace change. And we've also got, over half of you are also saying needing to do more with less and keep people productive. So it looks like there's a high percentage of you who are really facing a lot of these types of things. And one of the things that we know is that if you are a department head or if you are responsible for workplace learning and performance, your biggest challenge right now is probably how do you really keep productivity on the upswing even when the economy is heading into a downturn. Now, I'd like to see if you can resonate with that, if you've really experienced that. And one of the things that would be very helpful would be if you go to where you see the attendee list, and right next to where you see your name, kind of at the bottom of your names there, you'll see a place where you can it looks like a little hand. And I'd like to ask you to please raise your hand. Just click on that button. If this is something that you can relate to, just let me know if this is something that, yeah, you can relate to. This makes a lot of sense to you. You can recognize that. You felt that. Just let me know if I'm on track. And it looks like we're getting a lot of you coming in and saying yes. Still, the percentages are still coming in, but I've already got almost 50% of you are saying, yeah, this is a big challenge we've got. How do we keep productivity on the upswing, even when the economy heads into the downturn? So one of the things I really want to talk about is why it's so important to help your managers be successful, and what can you do in these types of challenges today. So let's take a look at why the manager's role is so significant and so critical, and look at some things that you can do to help address this issue. Gallup did a very interesting study. You might be familiar with it. Several years ago, it was one of the largest studies ever. They had interviewed more than 100,000 employees in over 12 industries, and they went back to identify what was happening in those organizations that were the most profitable and productive. What were the people in those organizations believing? What were the perceptions of employees, and what was different there? And in the highest performing organizations, they wanted to identify some very key, critical, nuts and bolts types of things so that other people could learn what they would need to do as well. Now, those 12 beliefs led to not just increased profitability, the bottom line, but it was a higher productivity, greater employee retention, and customer loyalty as well. And so what they found is that there were some things that those highest performing organizations did and what employees believed. I'm going to share those 12 things with you now. We'll take a look at 6 at a time, so you'll have a chance to look at all 12 of them. Now, what I'd like to ask you to do is you take a look at this list. Please ask yourself, how many of these do you think are influenced by the person's direct and immediate manager or supervisor? And take a look at all 6 of these, and then we're going to take a look at the remaining 6. I'm going to bring in a polling question and ask you what you think. How many of these are influenced by the manager? Okay. Let's take a look at the next 6 now and ask yourself that as well. How many of these are also influenced by the manager? That they have someone talk to them about their progress, that their opinions seem to count, that their company makes them feel their job is important. All of those types of issues. Okay, so now what I'd like to ask you is, from your perspective, how many of those were influenced by the direct manager? And let's take a look. I'm launching another poll. Tell us what you think here. Select one of these that you think is most appropriate. How many of those were really influenced by the manager? Was it all of them, most of them, some of them, few of them, or none? And please, everybody, if you could share your thoughts with us, we'd love to see what your perceptions are by looking at those 12 things. What do you think? Was it all of them, most of them, some of them, few of them, or none? And now let's take a look and see what your thoughts were. I'll share with you the results. And you can see that actually we have 35% of you say it was all of them, and 46% say most of them. So one of the things that we know is that really what we begin to see here is that by far most of these, if not all of them, are influenced by the managers. In fact, one of the things that Gallup then went back to recognize is that what became clear from this research that they did is that while we tend to celebrate great companies, in reality there are only great managers. And it's on the front line that the hard work of building a stronger workplace gets done. So in other words, it's the person's relationship, their immediate relationship with their manager or their supervisor that makes all the difference towards an organization's profitability and productivity. So there is no doubt about it. The manager's role is extremely critical. But here's another challenge that's happening in the world today. There are not enough good workers ready. We know that every 8 seconds a boomer turns 50 today, and 1/3 of the country turns 50 this year. So what happens is we're opening up a lot of new opportunities without enough of the younger generation really ready to step up to the plate. And what that means is, for example, as the boomers leave the workforce, either voluntarily or through layoffs, we also see that most companies have not adequately groomed their replacements. And there may be a lot of younger staff entering the workforce, but there's just not enough future managers ready to step up. You know, we've got a lot of people coming on board, and boomers are exiting, but there's a big gap in the middle. And in fact, you know, another pretty extensive research project showed that the single largest talent problem in most organizations is the current and impending gap in the leadership pipeline. So what that does in today's day and age is that there can be a myth out there that says that training is not important to the organization's strategy in hard times. And the real truth of that we know is that effective management is what helps your organization succeed, and it is critical. And, you know, one of the things you really want to avoid in your organization is what we call promotion without preparation. You know, it's like most new managers, when they move into the role of management, feel ill-prepared to take on that new role, and they don't know how to do it. And especially if they have some type of technical background, the skill set of managing people is totally foreign. What we also know is that way too many experienced managers either haven't had enough, if any, training, or it's not effective enough. And you don't want it to be too academic or too theoretical. What managers really need now is very practical how-to information that's targeted to them and into their job that they can immediately apply and implement. And again, let's go back to the hand raising. I would love to see if you feel that this resonates with you as well. Just raise your hand if you would agree with this, and let me know if, yes, you can identify with this one. You agree that the management role is critical, and you've got to have training programs that are practical and very easy for them to apply. Not too academic, but very targeted to their real needs. And I see, again, it's still, the percentages are still coming in, but it's well over half of you that can identify with that. So with that thought in mind then, let's look at what they need. What do they need, and what does your organization need? And what do they need now based on what's happening in the world today? Because there are some real basic fundamental skills that they really need to have in dealing with today's challenges. Now, we've identified 5 things, 5 fundamental issues that we think are critical in today's day and age. The first one is alignment with your organization's key objectives and priorities. You know, so that the managers are moving people in the direction that the organization needs to go. And by the way, I'm going to talk about each one of these one at a time, so we'll be spending a little more time on each one of these, and that'll be a real focus that we'll be taking today. The second one is, how do you help them manage time to focus on the key results they need? because there's a lot coming at them. The focus for so many people is on just trying to stay afloat with all the things that are coming at them and the constant, text messages and emails and voice messages and everything else. How do they stay focused on just those key organizational objectives and priorities? They've also got to have really good coaching skills to enhance the performance of their staff. One of the things we know is that they've got to be able to develop people. They've also got to coach them when they're not on track, and a lot of managers find this as a very difficult conversation to have. They feel very uncomfortable addressing performance issues, and yet when it's not done, it's a real disservice to that employee, to your team and department, and to the whole organization. So they really need to know how to do that well. And I know over 80% of you said you were struggling with the ability to keep people inspired and engaged in the midst of everything else that's happening today. Your managers, as we just saw, are the key people who are able to engage your staff. Their role in inspiring them and keeping them on board is critical. So, they've got to keep everybody wanting to do their best, even when there's a lot of change going on. They've got to become change agents. They've got to know how to inspire their staff to embrace those changes and really look at what do they do to get people to accept new ways of doing things that they may not have had to do before. So with that said, I want to spend some time on each one of these 5, and we're going to go through each one of them one at a time together. So let's talk about organizational alignment. One of the things we know is that this is critical in any program, whether it's a virtual program, a face-to-face program, or at any time. But not everybody always knows how to do that. And one of the things that's really a first step that's absolutely critical is to recognize what your organization's goals and key priorities are. And if people aren't sure, then it's really important that they know who to go to and how to identify those, and where do they go to get those answers, so that it's very, very clear and it can be filtered down and cascaded down through the whole organization. And then make decisions that support those goals and priorities. So, for example, if it is we need to focus on enhancing customer loyalty, we've been losing customers, then everything they do needs to be focused on that. Any of the things that they're looking at to streamline processes or be more efficient, all of those need to be passed down to the staff. And the manager, the middle manager, is the critical link between those organizational goals and priorities and their staff. The next thing is to then really look at how do you identify where the missing links are. So in other words, where are you now and where do you need to be? And what needs to happen to help get you there so that you can create a system that really ensures that you get the results you want? What do you need to do to hit the target that you're shooting for? Now, this whole topic of organizational alignment could be an entirely separate session. There's a lot to this. But I think the key point here is that it's really important for managers to have a plan to develop their staff that's in alignment with the organization's key initiatives for profitability, customer or employee retention, process improvement, et cetera, and that they know what that is, they know where to go to get it, and then they make sure that they're moving their staff in that direction. Then once that's clear, it's real important to manage their time to focus on those key priorities and to help their staff do the same thing so that everybody is held accountable for getting those results and making things happen. The benefit of having so much great technology today is that the benefit is that we are easy to access. We've got text messages, we've got voicemail, we've got emails, we've got cell phones. People can reach us anywhere. In fact, it's almost impossible to ever turn it off. The downside of that is that it's making everything urgent because it's happening now. You're getting that text message now, that voice message now, and it becomes even more challenging for your managers to filter through and discriminate what's urgent from what's really important. And it has never been more significant a skill to have than now in today's technological age. They can't just be busy. They've got to be effective. Every day, every moment counts, and everything that they do is either moving your organization closer towards success or encouraging it to fall behind. And so managing their time to focus on those priorities is critical. Now, we know that some of the really practical ways to help do this is to encourage people to identify what the most important things are that they need to accomplish each week. And we usually encourage people to focus on their top 3 things, so their list isn't too long, but they then schedule in time to accomplish those things and stay on track with those things so that they don't find, which we probably all have experienced, it's way too easy to get to the end of the week and say, wow, I was really running like crazy, but I didn't really accomplish those most important things I needed to get done. You don't want that to happen. Another thing is that we talk to a lot of managers, who, sometimes they'll set a to-do list, many of them do, but where they fall back is that they don't prioritize that daily, especially in accordance with what's really important that they need to be doing. So we encourage people to always be asking, how important is this activity to accomplish our organization's key goals? And if it's not an activity that moves you forward to those goals, ask if it's really that important. So the big challenge with all of this is it's not just time management, it's really more priority management. It's the ability to really stay focused and disciplined on getting the results you need, because without the ability to manage time and priorities, you're not going to be able to have your managers hit the target. And where this falls down in real life, a lot of times what happens is they're so busy dealing with all the urgent things that are happening right then that they can very easily get focused on just their own workload and forget how important it is to coach and develop their staff and leverage what they do with those people that are most key towards getting it done. So I'd love to hear from you now. What do you see in your own organization? Is this something that you can relate with? Do you see that your own managers need to enhance their management skills? So I'm asking another polling question now. Love to see your thoughts on this one. Do you believe that your managers need to enhance their time management skills? Please let me know if it's yes or no, and let's take a look and see what you think. Let me know if this strikes a common chord with you, if you can really see how critical it is, and you've experienced it. You may have experienced it also for yourself, and let us know what you think about that as well. Okay, all right. So let's now then take a look, and I'll share with you what the results were. And obviously, what we can see is by far 87% of you said yes, we do. For those of you who didn't, that's great. Congratulate yourself on that. But for most people, this is a huge, huge issue. And it just boils down to really helping your people manage the things that are going to help you be successful. Another thing that the third list on the list of 5 things is helping people look at how can they manage the performance and coach their people to be more effective. And, one of the things that we know, again, is that one of the biggest challenges most managers face, they tell us that over and over again, is how do I coach someone effectively when performance isn't where it needs to be, when there's a performance issue? Because for some managers, they just want to bury their head in the sand and hope it's going to get better, and others might try to bulldoze their way through it and think they're doing a really good job, and they end up really actually not handling it very well, and it ends up being even more demotivating and does more harm than good, actually. So one of the things that becomes really important is that they have the skills, the critical fundamental skills, to know how to address this and how to do it in a positive way that engages the employee and actually changes performance at the same time. And one of the things that we see is really critical in helping them do that is to enable the employee to help identify the solution to the problem. Because when it comes from the employee, there's a lot more ownership. There's also a lot more respect. It's not talking down to them or treating them as a child. It's really looking to them to help solve the problem and coming up with an action plan that's really going to address the issue. Now, you also want to make sure that you've got a time frame in there and that you've got follow-up. So you don't just want to address this once and then leave it hanging. They could struggle through creating a beautiful discussion, go all the way through it, feel really good about it, and then if there's no follow-up, the whole thing falls apart. So they've got to make sure they've got a really good follow-up and time frame. and they've also got to be really specific to focus on the performance issue, not the person. And in our normal everyday language, we tend to use more general language than specific language. We tend to not be specific enough, and a lot of miscommunication can occur here. So again, it's really important that managers have the critical skills, and that they learn it in a way that's really practical, and that they can practice, and that they can understand. So next question, really, that we'd love to hear from you here, as it relates to this, is, and please share your thoughts of this and be honest here. Do you think that managers in your organization address performance issues often enough? Do you think they address performance issues often enough? And please let us know, yes or no, what do you think? Are most of the managers feeling pretty comfortable with this? They can do this often as needed. They do it pretty well. Or do you think it doesn't happen enough? And, the reason I ask that is that we've worked with so many organizations that have done employee opinion surveys, and they just always seem to find that this comes up as an issue. And I'd like to now share the results with you and let you see what everyone said. And, of course, here what we can see is 72% of you are saying, no, they don't address this often enough. 28% said yes, so pat yourself on the back if they did. But for most people, almost 3/4 of you, this is just not happening. And, by the way, I want to let you know, you're not unique in that. This is so common. It comes up time after time, and it's almost a consistent problem for most people, because a lot of managers they don't want it to go wrong. They don't want to address conflict. They want everything to be easy and comfortable and people to be happy. And yet, when they're given the training to know how to do this well, and they recognize what a gift this is for the other person, then they're much more comfortable with it, because not addressing this becomes a bigger problem. And it becomes a bigger problem for everybody else around them and for your organization. So this is another thing that's really critical for managers today to be able to do. The fourth skill that we really wanted to talk about is the ability to inspire and engage their staff. So I wanted to start by sharing this study with you that I think is really interesting, where they asked a group of managers what did they think employees most wanted from their jobs. And they looked at these 10 items. And what the managers thought employees wanted from their jobs was very different than what the employees wanted. So they asked the employees what they wanted, and it was a very, very different thing.
Susan, you need to clear the poll.
Oh, I sure do. Okay, great.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm. So here we go. So one of the things that we know that happened is that when the managers looked at these 10 things and they began to recognize it, the managers thought that what employees probably most wanted were things that were pretty much related to financial issues. So as you can see here, they thought the number one thing they probably wanted was good wages. The number two thing was probably job security. The third thing was promotion and growth with the company. But then when they went back to the employees, what they found that the employees wanted was something very different. What the employees said that they wanted was actually those things that are very much related to, number one, feeling full appreciation for work done. Number two, feeling in on things. Number three, sympathetic understanding of their issues, but it means really being heard and understood. And then came the financial things. So in other words, it looks like this. Now, this surprised me when I first looked at this, because at first I thought, I don't know. That I would have thought they would have wanted the financial things first, until I started to think about it from the perspective of, well, why do people leave? There's people that quit and leave, and there's people that quit and stay. So for those that quit, they check out mentally or they check out physically, usually it's because one of those top three things didn't happen for them. They didn't feel valued and appreciated. They didn't feel in on things that impacted them. They didn't feel heard and understood. And they may tell you when they leave that they're leaving because they got a better offer, when in reality they're leaving because of those issues happened first, and then they started to look around for another job. But one of the things that we see that this happens over and over again. In fact, I'm curious, I'd love to see from just your own experience, if you could raise your hand and just let me know, does this agree with you? Have you seen some of this for yourself? If you think about why you would want to leave, would it be because of one of these three things at the top before you got to job security or any of the financials? And again, it looks like a lot of you are saying yes to this, as I still see the hands coming up and being raised on this one. So again, what we know is that if this is all something that the manager controls, this is something the manager controls. That's the good news. You may not always have as much money in your pool of resources that you'd like to have for promotions, for bonuses, for all of those types of things, especially in today's day and age. But those top three things are always things that the manager can do. Now, one of the things that, since appreciation is so critical, and this is generation-wide, one of the things that becomes really important is to recognize that one of the greatest ways that you can really show appreciation is to let people know, is to recognize them and let them and tell them that you really value them. And we know that people have just a fundamental human need for this. They want to feel respected. They want to feel that their hard work is noticed. They want to feel that they're important. And this is one of the most effective ways to engage them. It's also the easiest way to disengage them when it doesn't happen. And what we see happen consistently in a lot of organizations is that many managers, they may feel that they value their staff, but they just don't know how to show it, or they don't think it's important, and they don't do it. And they may not even realize, they may have huge blind spots around them about the messages that they're sending off to people because maybe they're more quiet, they want to stay to themselves, or they're busy, or they're not available, or they're short, or they're stressed. All of those kinds of things can impact how engaged someone feels. And remember, it does go back to the relationship with their immediate manager. Now, the last critical thing that we want to talk about is that, as it's also related to this whole issue, is that we know that all people are motivated. They're motivated towards something. They're motivated maybe to leave early, but they're motivated towards something. But the manager is the one that encourages the climate for this, and it's important to really know what's key to each person that they're managing. Now, the last skill that we want to talk about is managers as agents of change. And, it's natural. Another natural human tendency is to resist change. We tend to do it even when it's to our best interest because it's something that we're uncomfortable with. And so people are going to go through very predictable phases of transition. When you understand what those phases are, you can then know what to anticipate and how to deal with it and know what the manager needs to do. And even when you find that you've got a non-negotiable change, there are ways that the managers can get buy-in by getting ownership from people to how they're going to do that. And the more opportunities that staff have to be included in decisions that impact them, just as we saw it was a really important issue for them, the more buy-in you're going to get. Another thing that's really critical in today's age when there's so much going on and so much change is happening is managers have got to keep people in the loop. They've got to communicate. Gossip can spiral out of control so easily when that doesn't happen. So if you're a manager or a department head and you're seeing a lot of changes come by, you want to try to keep your people in the loop as much as you can. Now, we know that people are going to go through predictable phases of transition and change, so let's just take a look at what some of those are. One of the things that's going to happen is people will start with, in the upper left-hand box here, where the first experience you see, the first comments that you hear are going to be related to denial. It will sound something like, I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe they're doing this. I can't believe what senior management has come up with now. I can't believe they're scrutinizing this expense. I can't believe there's no more travel available. I can't believe, and it can go on and on and on and on. And that's the first phase of transition. Know to expect it. But then what will happen is people will move into resistance. And what will happen here is that they'll actively either express frustration or anger or disapproval or disagreement. I don't think we should be doing it this way. What are they doing it this way for? And sometimes people will, be asked to do something a new way, and they just don't do it. They still do it the old way. And it's natural here to see that happen. It's natural when you hear people get irritated. Just know it's part of the phases of transition that they go through when dealing with change. Because then you get to the explorative stage. And here they're trying to move into it, but they're still not sure how. So they ask a lot of questions. How am I supposed to do this again? And they take one step forward and one step back, and they kind of struggle with this until they finally move into the commitment phase, where now they know how to do it. They've learned the new procedure. They've learned a new software package. And at this point, what's really happening is they've embraced change, and they're comfortable with it until the next change comes along anyway. So just know, managers, you're going to see this happen a lot in today's age. And when you see people going through some of those phases, there are tools and techniques that a manager can use in each one of those and recognize those and not blame someone for being resistant. Just know that they're going through part of the process to transition into change. What we also know is that again, we talked about communication. If managers don't share what they know, then people get afraid. And the definition of fear, we talk about is false expectation appearing real. It may not be based on fact at all. And so it becomes really important to make sure that you nip that in the bud before it gets out of hand. So with that said, as we talked about those 5 skills, the challenges that you are all probably facing is how do we help our managers develop the skills they need to lead us through these uncertain times? And how can we do this in the most productive way possible and in the most cost-effective way possible? And this is where the benefits of live virtual training come into play. Now, one of the things that we know about live virtual training is that it's on the rise. We know that the American Society for Training and Development does a survey every quarter called the Learning Executives Confidence Index. And one of the things that they just did is that they found that 46.4% of organizations are restricting travel for learning, and almost 52% are reporting an increased usage of e-learning and virtual delivery, which makes a lot of sense. I mean, if your people are geographically dispersed, you don't want most of your training budget to go towards travel. You want it to be towards training. But with that said, you've got to find ways to make your training as effective as it possibly can. Now, when they're talking about e-learning and virtual delivery, there's really 2 types of approaches to look at. With virtual delivery, we're talking about live, instructor-led, online virtual learning using a platform very similar as to what we see here. The only difference is in a live virtual class, we've got a lot of people on this session today. In a live virtual class, you'd only have 20 people or so. And you'd be asking questions. People would be coming off mute. They'd be answering questions in chat. You'd be calling on them. It'd be very, very interactive. But the whole thing would be virtual. Also, when we talk about self-paced e-learning, a lot of times you can find that can augment your live virtual classes. It can be standalone or part of a blended virtual solution. And we've, done it both ways and really looked at the most effective ways to use it. So with that thought said, I'm very interested in learning from you. I'm going to send over another polling question. How frequently does your organization provide live virtual learning now? So in other words, a live class with an instructor, similar to what we're doing now, but a smaller group which can be much, much more interactive. Please select one of these answers that you think fits you the most. Do you do it frequently, occasionally, rarely, or not at all? And let's take a look and see what you think. And this will also, again, give you an opportunity to benchmark yourself against other people in the session today so that you can get a good idea about how other people are using it. Let's take a look at this. I'll share with you the results. One thing I'm very happy to say is it looks like here we've got 46% of you frequently use it. And this could possibly be because many of you have been some of our current or previous clients. I will tell you, I did a presentation in this last month for both the American Society for Training and Development, where we had close to 600 people register, and the Society for Human Resource Management, which was almost as many. And when we asked this question to them, we had a big percentage who said rarely or not at all. So you are a unique group, perhaps. But for one thing I want to say is I'm really glad to see most of you are using it frequently. That's great, because it's going to really help you be able to meet these needs in a very cost-effective way when you do it effectively. Now, let's see here. Now then also with that said, I'd like to go back and begin to look at self-paced e-learning and what's your experience with that. And I'm going to send over another question here. Now, self-paced e-learning is different. This is an online self-paced course that you would take on your own. It's not part of a live virtual class. But please select one of these that you think fits you. How frequently does your organization provide this? Frequently, occasionally, rarely, or not at all. And let's take a look and see what that shows and how you kind of fall in here as well. And is this something you do a lot of or not very often? Okay, and I'm going to share with you those results. Okay, so one of the things we can see here is, again, we've got most of you saying frequently and only the smallest percentage saying not at all. 36% frequently, 32% occasionally, 18 rarely, and 14 not at all. So, again, thank you for sharing those thoughts with us. I think one of the things that we know is that there can be benefits to both live, virtual, and online self-paced. And so let's take a look at the benefits of both of those. First of all, the benefits for live online learning is that you can really meet the needs of today's managers because it, for one thing, reduces time away from work. We've heard from so many people who said what they really want is short 60 to 90-minute segments that are very focused on their needs and make it a process and not an event. So they don't have time to go to a 2-3-day class anymore. If they're going to take time away from work, they want to know they're going to walk away with specific practical things that will make a difference for them. Also, with live online learning, you can very easily customize it, much easier than you can with e-learning. You can build accountability into your course design because it's a process. So people are assigned activities to do between sessions, and they have to come back and talk about how they did on that. And, of course, there's no travel involved at all. And what we also know with e-learning, one of the benefits of that is that that can be accessed anytime, anywhere. And, again, you can use it either as a standalone course or part of a blended solution, which is our bias is to use it as a blended solution because we've just seen how it can be an excellent tool for either pre-work or reinforcement to a live virtual training program. We also know that there's extra accountability to complete it when it's part of pre-work to another class. So since so many of you have been doing live virtual training, I want to just share with you some best design practices for it, some key principles that you're going to want to consider. One of the things that we know is that your courses obviously need to address performance issues that have an impact on business results. So you want to begin to start to focus on what those key things are and design your program to not do everything, but focus on the most important things first and make it into small chunks of content that's very, very focused on what they need to do, what they need to know, and how they need to apply it. Because this last point couldn't be emphasized more strongly. When you make learning a process, that's how people learn. They learn by taking it in small pieces, then going back and applying it, and then coming back. That is a real key. And live virtual training especially lends itself. So people will tell us that when they do live virtual training this way as a process, they actually get better results than they frequently got in their 2 to 3 day programs. What we also know is that you want to give them lots of tools and guidance for the development of personal action plans. We use personal action plans in every live virtual class. It's really critical. They can type it in chat. It's like putting it in writing, sharing it with everybody so everybody in the class sees it, the facilitator sees it. They come off mute and talk about what they're planning to do, and it's all right there for everyone to see. And it makes them more accountable when, again, it's a series of sessions. Now, at the beginning of every follow-up session, we'll spend at least 20 minutes at the start of that new session to ask every participant to report on their progress and discuss how things went and what did they achieve. And that is a great accountability and reinforcement tool. One of the things that you also want to be able to do is provide coaching and encouragement along the way. Now, you can also do coaching virtually on the phone if people are in geographic areas. And so having that one-on-one time can also be sometimes even more effective than if they had just been in a traditional face-to-face class. Make sure they share their action plans also with their managers, so you keep the managers in the loop, and it's good learning transfer opportunities there. And give them a lot of post-course follow-up resources and ongoing expectations for transferring this back to the job. Now, we use a lot of reinforcement tips newsletters for two-way dialogue. We include surveys in our newsletters to ask them how it's going, and we send those out, usually, every other month for a year after every one of our classes. And because of that, we get really high rates of people applying the information back on the job. Now, I want to share with you a case study example to just show you how to put it all into practice. I think it makes it a lot easier to be able to start to look at how it all works. And this is a blended learning solution with live virtual training, also with self-paced e-learning and one-on-one coaching. So you can see how it might all fit together. We frequently, again, begin with some type of assessment. So we found that 360-degree feedback is a great tool for helping managers identify their strengths and development needs. And the very first session would actually not be a live-based class, but be a one-on-one coaching session where the coach would help the participant create their development plan. We would also then ask them to complete a time mastery profile where they could assess their own time management strengths and development needs, and to come to the next session, which is then a live web-based training session where we're going to talk about how they can use their time more effectively, and also everybody then would share their action plan with the class, and they would be assigned in preparation for session 3 an e-learning course called Managing Performance Discussions, which talks about how to address performance issues. In session 3, that's another live-based session, and they're going to really begin to start to talk about how can they coach other people. We'll have some practice exercises there. They'll share their action plan, and also then look at, be assigned the next course on how to understand behavioral styles and use that when they're coaching people and helping them adopt change. The fourth session is really focused on change and what are some of the key things they need to know. Now, one thing I want to show you is because we're so strongly believing in reinforcement, again, we have live virtual reinforcement sessions 1 month and 6 months later. So what that means is everybody comes back as a class and they report on their progress and they talk about what's working well and what's not. And we send them the reinforcement newsletter every 2 months and follow up in another year with their second 360 feedback tool. Now, what's interesting about this is to realize this whole program is virtual. So you could do this very effectively for people who are all over the country and do it very easily. Now, one of the things that we also want to share with you is that we can make this program available to your organization, and you can customize it, however, to any specific topic areas that are important to you. We've shared with you some of the ones that we have found are topics that are most important, but we have a lot available. And I also want to let you know that we can train your trainers to also deliver this if that's something that you're interested in as well. So almost all of our programs have train the trainer programs and facilitator manuals available. Now, when you go to the live chat link at the end of the session today, you can download our live virtual course catalog there. Here's a list of just some of the course topics, but this is a short list. We've actually got a pretty extensive list that you can see on the website, and you'll want to make sure that you, again, go to that live chat room because not only is that catalog available, but there's also some excellent additional resources there. I also wanted to let you know that you can preview at our website a full library of online e-learning courses for management development, customer service, or sales training. And again, those could be standalone or part of a complete blended solution. So our objectives for today were really to provide an overview of a method that can help you enhance management development, but also show you how you can do it in a successful way with lower cost resources that can help you maximize impact. I just want to share that in the end, what we know is that the development of your managers is critical. And to go back to some of the Gallup research again, they show us that the single most important determinant of individual performance is a person's relationship with his or her immediate manager. So that is just really critical and really key in helping your managers succeed. And I hope that you'll really consider that as an important thing that can give you a real competitive edge in today's marketplace. So we're going to go to the live chat in a minute, and you can see the website that's there. You'll want to be able to go there, and we'll be starting that in just a moment. But I want to see what questions you might have about anything that we talked about today. I also do just want to mention that when you go to that chat room, look on the left-hand side of it because there are some free resources you can download there. There's a short article summary of these topics that we've talked about, as well as some additional resources, so you won't want to miss that. But Kathy, I'd like to ask you, I know we've only got about 5 minutes left, but I'd like to ask you what questions you saw in the question box so that I can try to answer some of those before we go to the live chat room.
Okay, Susan, I have one question here from Mike who says, do you have any statistics on retention of materials presented on a virtual training session and or how to increase that retention?
I think that, Mike, one of the things that we know is really important is that the statistics that we have found is that I can give you an example. Like part of this is going to be very much targeted to your own organization and how you set it up, but I can give you some statistics about some of our own courses. We found that we had an independent study done by an independent agency who went back to people who had participated in our courses 12 to 18 months earlier, and they found that 80% of those people, of those managers, were still applying the information taught in class 12 to 18 months later. But what I will tell you, Mike, is that it had all the reinforcement resources that we're talking about. You can't get that type of result by just having one class, having it be an event, and have it work. You really got to have it be a process. You've got to have lots of reinforcement, high touch, two-way dialogue. But when you do it that way, with a lot of things we talked about here, you can get those kinds of results. And I hope that answers your question, Mike. I can tell you that's what we've seen with our own clients. And it was kind of interesting because the whole study was done by another consultant. Kathy, what other questions?
Okay, we have another question from Devin. Do you know of any courses that focus on managing the independent contractor?
A different topic. Managing the independent contractor. I don't know of any courses off the top of my head specifically for that, Devin. But one thing I can tell you is that some of the issues about addressing performance issues, coaching people to succeed and addressing performance problems will be the same whether it's an independent contractor or an employee. So some of that will be the same. I understand you're probably looking at a unique issue. I don't know of any course specifically targeting that, but I know that some of the ones that we talked about here could be applicable to an independent contractor as well as an employee. And Kathy, why don't we see, we've got time maybe for one more.
Okay, this one is from Terry. How do the instructors doing the live virtual training keep the attendees engaged during the training?
Good question, Terry. One of the ways they've got to keep them engaged, really good question, is they've got to keep things moving, really critical. So you don't want them to spend 15 minutes on one slide. That's a real snore. They've got to engage them and ask them questions. So one of the ways that we do it is that we'll ask for their ideas and ask them to answer like an open-ended question in text chat. We see them answer it. We then call on them, based on the answers they give, to explain what they're talking about, and they'll start sharing their thoughts. Now, what's different about live virtual is that in a face-to-face class, you ask a question, only one person can answer it at a time. In a live virtual class, you ask that question and you ask everybody to answer it in text chat, and then you call on people and you have them talk about it. And you actually get even more interaction when you do it that way. You also want to use all of the features that your platform has, whether it's, hand raising, text chat, polling questions, whiteboarding, breakout rooms, simulated animated games. There's lots of tools out there for that. And, we definitely can share some of that information with you from some of our other sessions that we've done. So with that thought, I'd like to say thank you to everybody for sharing with us your thoughts today. We hope that you'll join us at this website, www.quantumlearn.com/chat. And we're going to be there I'll be available for 30 minutes. You can also share your ideas with each other. And one of the things that you'll know that left-hand side of that screen for your participation today. I hope you'll really join us for this live chat, even if you only stay for a short period of time. And I'm going to stop the session now and look forward to joining everybody there. Thanks so much. Have a great rest of your day.